Every Halloween, someone decides that the best way to embrace the spooky spirit is to nearly burn down their house with a dollar store fog machine and a dream. The truly terrifying stuff, the ones that make you question human evolution, are still coming. 1. A man in Florida, because of course it's Florida, decided to haunt his own neighborhood by hanging from a tree dressed as a ghost. Unfortunately, he did such a good job that passersby thought they'd discovered a real body. Police, fire trucks, and half the local news stations showed up before he sheepishly admitted it was just a prank. You have to admire the ambition. He wanted to look dead, and boy, did he commit. It's one thing to go viral, it's another to become a public safety announcement for why Halloween decorations require context. 2. Somewhere in Ohio, a woman tried to carve a pumpkin using gasoline. Not candles, not carving tools, gasoline. She poured a little bit inside to make it glow brighter, then lit it. It glowed all right, bright enough for the fire department to arrive. The official report described it as a teachable moment. Translation: she turned her jack-o'-lantern into a small tactical weapon. It's almost poetic. Halloween is about spirits, and she definitely summoned a few from the local fire station. 3. A couple in Arizona decided to stage a realistic zombie outbreak for their neighborhood's block party. Their method? Hiring friends to run through the streets covered in fake blood, groaning and banging on car windows. You know what else looks like that? A felony in progress. Several panicked neighbors called 911, one guy drew a gun, and the party ended with everyone handcuffed on the sidewalk. Nothing screams festive like a SWAT team saying, "Trick or treat." 4. There was a man in Kentucky who thought he could make his haunted house more immersive by replacing the fog machine with dry ice and vinegar. The result was a chemical reaction strong enough to send 4 people to the ER and melt part of the carpet. He told reporters he didn't expect science to be that powerful. Imagine creating a house of horrors so realistic you accidentally become one of the exhibits. 5. One homeowner tried to make their lawn look like a crime scene, complete with fake blood, chalk outlines, and a corpse made of blankets. The setup was so convincing that an entire forensics team arrived. When the homeowner came outside wearing a Freddy Krueger sweater and holding a cup of coffee, police nearly drew their guns. Moral of the story: don't mix realism with caffeine and poor judgment. 6. A YouTuber attempted a DIY séance using an app called Spirit Talker Pro, some candles, and a pizza box as a Ouija board. Midway through, a breeze knocked over a candle, setting the box and their new rug on fire. The only spirit they summoned was a fire extinguisher. Nothing says gateway to the afterlife like a Domino's logo slowly melting into your hardwood floor. 7. One guy in Oregon decided to turn his Tesla into a haunted car that would drive itself like a ghost. Unfortunately, he forgot that Tesla's autopilot doesn't include haunted house mode. The car backed itself straight into his neighbor's garage door. The video went viral, titled "When Artificial Intelligence Meets Actual Stupidity." Somewhere, Elon Musk sighed deeply without knowing why. 8. A woman in Maine thought she could train her cat to ride a Roomba while dressed as a witch. The cat disagreed. The moment she pressed record, the cat launched itself off the vacuum, shredded the witch hat, and disappeared behind the fridge. The only thing possessed in that house was her Wi-Fi password, as she frantically tried to delete the footage from TikTok. 9. A teenager decided to prank his mom by hiding in the dryer wearing a clown mask. She found him by turning the dryer on. Thankfully, she stopped it immediately, but he emerged dizzy, sweaty, and with the look of someone who had just seen the other side. Let that be a warning. If you're going to act like a circus clown, expect to get tumble-dried. 10. In New Jersey, a man bought 30 fake tombstones to decorate his yard, but decided to make them personal. Each one had the name of a real neighbor. He thought it was dark humor. They thought it was a threat. By day 3, he had a homeowners meeting, a cease and desist letter, and a reputation as the neighborhood's least eligible bachelor. 11. One guy dressed up as a vampire and tried to scare trick-or-treaters by rising from the coffin in his driveway. He didn't plan for one small thing: claustrophobia. Midway through the night, he locked himself inside the box and had to be rescued by firefighters. He later said he'd never felt more undead. There's committed to the role, and then there's being airlifted from your own prop. 12. A group of college students tried to create a haunted corn maze but didn't mark the exits. By midnight, 3 people had gotten lost for over 2 hours, and one couple called 911. The dispatcher literally had to tell them, "Walk toward the sound of the highway." Nothing says Halloween fun like realizing you've built a psychological experiment instead of an attraction. 13. A man in California installed motion-activated screaming mannequins in his yard. Great idea, except he forgot to turn them off. At 3 a.m., a raccoon triggered the system, setting off a chain reaction of wailing plastic corpses that woke the entire street. The police arrived to find the homeowner in pajamas, explaining to them that the undead were malfunctioning. 14. One woman in Texas decided to hand out healthy Halloween treats. You'd think fruit or trail mix, right? Nope, she gave out raw Brussels sprouts wrapped like candy. Every child in a 2-block radius booed her front porch. By the end of the night, her car had been decorated with toilet paper and rage. It turns out, nothing haunts you like the memory of betrayal. 15. In Pennsylvania, a guy thought it'd be hilarious to scare his friends by hiding in a graveyard at night wearing a Grim Reaper costume. Unfortunately, he chose the wrong graveyard, a private one. The groundskeeper mistook him for a trespasser, called the cops, and he was arrested while still holding his plastic scythe. He told officers he was just doing content. They told him he was just doing time. 16. Someone decided to fill an entire haunted house with realistic chainsaw sounds without warning the actors. Midway through, one of them panicked, called 911, and locked themselves in a closet. The official police statement later described the incident as a miscommunication of horror intent, which sounds like a fancy way to say, everyone lost their minds. 17. A guy in Minnesota thought it'd be funny to replace his office's motion sensor lights with red bulbs for Halloween ambiance. The problem? He forgot to tell HR. When the building manager walked in and saw the room glowing blood red with fog rolling across the floor, he called security. So, technically, he succeeded. It was scary, just not in the way he planned. 18. A guy in Illinois wanted to make his Halloween party extra immersive, so he bought a dozen fog machines and ran them all at once inside his apartment. Within minutes, the entire building's smoke alarms went off, sprinklers activated, and guests were slipping around in what looked like a low-budget Silent Hill reboot. When firefighters arrived, he tried to convince them it was atmospheric storytelling. They informed him it was actually public endangerment. He later posted online that it was worth it for the vibe. I love that phrase, worth it for the vibe. Yeah, nothing says aesthetic like flooding your landlord's property with 3 inches of mystical humidity. 19. A haunted hayride in North Carolina decided to upgrade its realism by using actual chainsaws, without the chains removed. Yes, they gave underpaid teenagers live power tools and told them to look scary, but not too scary. One actor tripped, revved the saw mid-fall, and shredded part of a hay bale, luckily not a spectator. The owners called it a miscommunication during rehearsal. Sure, because nothing communicates authentic Halloween like a lawsuit waiting to happen. The whole event was canceled, but honestly, I think they just accidentally invented a new sport, competitive natural selection. 20. A couple in Oregon wanted to host a witch's brew night and thought it'd be fun to drink out of an old cauldron they found at a flea market. Turns out it wasn't vintage. It was lead. Every single person who took a sip ended up calling poison control. The hostess reportedly said she thought it just tasted metallic. Metallic, yes, because it was metal. It's the first party in history where the hangover came with a toxicology report. 21. One small-town library hosted a Halloween reading of Dracula and decided to dim the lights and add some realistic bats for ambiance. The bats were indeed realistic because they accidentally left a side door open near the belfry, and about 20 actual bats joined the event. People screamed, kids cried, and the librarian calmly announced over the intercom, this was not part of the program. Somewhere, Bram Stoker was slow clapping. 22. A guy in Tennessee decided to perform a werewolf transformation on TikTok using hair glue, actual dog fur, and a space heater to fuse the look. He ended up with second-degree burns, a patchy pelt, and a permanent reminder that maybe the internet doesn't need that much commitment. His caption afterward was, anything for content. And that's really the modern horror story, isn't it? Not vampires, not ghosts, just clout. 23. A group of college students in Colorado built a haunted house where guests had to crawl through a pitch-black tunnel filled with realistic screams. The realistic part came from a student who got stuck halfway and started yelling for help. The others thought it was part of the act and kept sending people through. By the time someone realized it wasn't theater, the poor guy had been buried under fake cobwebs and real regret for almost 20 minutes. Nothing says immersive experience like being trapped in a DIY panic attack. 24. A mom in Nevada decided to dress her toddler as a mini Michael Myers and take him trick-or-treating with a fake knife. Unfortunately, the knife wasn't fake. It was a real kitchen knife with tape on the handle. When a neighbor saw a small masked figure waddling toward them with a blade, they locked the door and called 911. The mom tried to explain, "It's just Halloween." The cops tried to explain, "It's still a felony." 25. A YouTuber attempted to create a haunted mirror effect by trapping a smoke machine inside a bathroom cabinet. It exploded. He later said in his vlog that he underestimated the pressure buildup, which is an interesting way to describe turning your bathroom into a foggy war zone. The mirror shattered, alarms went off, and the only ghost that appeared was the one of his destroyed security deposit. 26. Someone in a small Massachusetts town decorated their lawn with realistic hanging bodies that were actually just their old mannequins from a retail job. The problem? They forgot to tell anyone. Neighbors called the cops, thinking a serial killer had moved in. By the time the homeowner came outside with a pumpkin spice latte to explain, there were 5 squad cars, a helicopter, and 1 traumatized mailman who quit mid-route. 27. A high school teacher tried to impress her students with a spooky chemistry demo involving liquid nitrogen and pumpkins. The goal was to make it fog dramatically. Instead, the pumpkin exploded, spraying nitrogen mist and pulp across the classroom ceiling. She told local news she didn't expect it to be so powerful. That's the same sentence every mad scientist says 5 minutes before the montage cuts to fire trucks. 28. A man in Utah decided to prank his roommate by dressing as a ghost and standing silently in the hallway at 2 a.m. The roommate woke up, saw the figure, and swung a baseball bat at it. The prank ended with 1 concussion, 2 broken teeth, and 1 very awkward ER explanation that began with the words, "It was supposed to be funny." Nothing says friendship like a mild, traumatic brain injury. 29. A group of college friends thought it'd be funny to make their own creepy scarecrow using raw meat. Yes, raw meat. They hung it on a pole outside the dorm. Within hours, the smell was unbearable, and by morning, every raccoon in the county had arrived for an all-you-can-eat buffet. Campus security called it an unprecedented wildlife incident. Translation: you idiots invented raccoon Woodstock. 30. A guy in Texas tried to DIY a werewolf costume using actual animal pelts. Unfortunately, one of the hides wasn't fully tanned and started to rot during the party. By the end of the night, he smelled like a cross between a wet dog and a haunted barbecue pit. He spent the rest of the evening explaining to everyone that it was part of the character. Yeah, the character being biological hazard. 31. A woman in New York tried to spook her husband by sneaking into their backyard at night, dressed as the girl from The Ring. Unfortunately, she didn't realize he was out there checking the pool filter with a flashlight and a hockey stick. The resulting security footage looks like a crossover between a horror film and a bar fight. To his credit, he did apologize after realizing he'd just assaulted his own wife in self-defense. 32. A bar in Wisconsin thought it'd be clever to host a Drink Till You See Ghosts Halloween event. They weren't kidding. One guy drank so much he claimed he was possessed by whiskey, then tried to perform an exorcism on the jukebox. The bar owner later described the night as spirited. I'll say, nothing says holiday spirit like vomiting while demanding holy water in a Miller Lite can. 33. A TikTok influencer tried to stage a ghost caught on camera by hanging fishing line from the ceiling fan to make objects move. Midway through filming, the fan turned on, flinging everything, including the phone, across the room. The final video shows 15 seconds of chaos and 1 perfect quote before it cuts. Wait, that's not how physics works. And no, apparently, it's not. 34. A guy in California tried to make his Halloween photo booth edgy by using real barbed wire as decoration. By the end of the night, 3 people needed tetanus shots. 1 person's costume was shredded, and the bar had to put up a sign that said, "No touching the murder wire." He claimed it was for realism. Congratulations, man. You officially nailed the horror vibe, because everyone left screaming. 35. A man in Wisconsin decided to really scare the neighborhood by turning his front lawn into a fake zombie graveyard, complete with motion sensors, moaning sound effects, and a live goat painted gray to look undead. At first, people were impressed. Then the goat escaped, sprinted down Main Street still wearing its foam gravestone harness, and terrorized a Starbucks drive-thru. When animal control showed up, the guy insisted it was performance art. Yeah, nothing says avant-garde horror like explaining to the cops that your zombie apocalypse just ate someone's pumpkin spice muffin. 36. A woman in Georgia tried to summon spirits by reading Latin spells she found online. Unfortunately, she didn't realize she was reading out loud the ingredients list for Italian lasagna. She spent 15 minutes calling upon oregano and ground beef, while her candles slowly burned through a plastic tablecloth. When her friends asked what happened, she said, "I think I accidentally summoned dinner." The only thing haunting that kitchen afterward was the smell of melted Tupperware and disappointment. 37. In a California neighborhood, one guy thought it'd be hilarious to replace his porch light with a strobe to add tension. What he added instead was 3 car accidents and a neighbor's seizure. When police told him it violated about 12 safety codes, he said, "Oh, I thought it'd just look cinematic." Yeah, bro, it did. You turned your entire block into a deleted scene from The Purge. 38. A teenager in Kansas filmed a possessed doll prank by wiring an old Barbie to an electric toothbrush. The thing started vibrating so hard it launched off the table, bounced off a wall, and hit him in the face. He uploaded it anyway with the caption, "Proof of paranormal activity." Technically true. The paranormal force was called Newton's laws. 39. A haunted house owner decided to go authentic by using pig's blood for decoration. He kept it in buckets for a week because apparently refrigeration wasn't spooky enough. By day 3, the smell could have summoned Satan himself. Guests started gagging before they even made it inside. Health inspectors described it as biohazard chic. He was fined $4,000, but on the bright side, his Yelp reviews all agreed it was the most realistic haunted house ever. 40. One guy in Arizona wanted to carve the world's biggest jack-o'-lantern, so he bought an industrial heat gun to hollow it out faster. 2 minutes later, the pumpkin caught fire and rolled down the driveway like a flaming meteor. He chased it yelling, "Stop, my art!" The footage went viral as the pumpkin that tried to escape hell. If that's not the spirit of Halloween, I don't know what is. 41. A woman in Ohio filled her yard with fake cobwebs to create a spider's nest effect. It was very convincing, so convincing that when it rained, it trapped a swarm of actual spiders, hundreds of them. By morning, her entire porch looked like a nature documentary directed by Satan. She told local news she'd learned to respect nature, which is the polite way of saying, "I've moved and burned my house down." 42. A guy in a ghost costume decided to prank his friends by floating outside their second-story window. He used helium balloons and fishing line. It worked perfectly until a gust of wind carried him up and over the roof, landing him in a neighbor's pool. He described the experience as terrifyingly peaceful. Somewhere, Casper's ghost is filing for defamation. 43. A group of friends thought it'd be funny to host a séance in an abandoned Walmart. They broke in at midnight, lit candles, and started chanting, "Show us a sign." The sprinklers went off. They screamed and ran, convinced they'd angered a ghost. The ghost's name? Fire suppression system. 44. A man in Florida, because it's always Florida, painted his entire house black to make it look cursed. Unfortunately, black paint absorbs heat, and his air conditioning broke the first week. He spent Halloween sitting inside a 110-degree sauna, trying to hand out candy through a cracked door. He later told reporters it felt like being in hell. Mission accomplished. 45. A couple in Alaska wanted to do a romantic graveyard photo shoot for Halloween. Cute idea, until they realized the ground wasn't frozen yet. They sank knee-deep into a fresh burial site. They called for help while still posing because, as the boyfriend explained, the lighting was perfect. That's the kind of dedication usually reserved for influencers and cult leaders. 46. A guy in Texas dressed as Frankenstein and thought it'd be cool to recreate the lightning scene using a Tesla coil. His backyard briefly turned into a scene from Final Destination. He melted his extension cord, fried his Wi-Fi router, and possibly reset his pacemaker. He told TikTok viewers it was a scientific success. Yeah, he proved stupidity conducts electricity beautifully. 47. A small-town church tried to attract kids with a wholesome Halloween alternative event where they replaced haunted houses with Bible reenactments. It was going great until the Jonah and the whale scene malfunctioned and the inflatable whale swallowed a child. Nobody was hurt, but it's not ideal when your anti-Halloween event accidentally turns into an exorcism practice. 48. A woman in Utah built a cursed mirror maze in her garage using real mirrors. The problem? She didn't mark the exits. She got lost inside her own attraction for 2 hours before her husband found her yelling at her reflection to show me the way out. She told the local paper it was a humbling experience. That's one word for arguing with yourself in 4K. 49. A guy in Maine wanted to give out mystery candy by mixing treats with random objects in a bucket. A kid reached in and pulled out a spare car key. The man said it was part of the fun. The next day, his car was gone. It's almost poetic. The universe said, "You wanted mystery? Here's Grand Theft Auto." 50. A horror enthusiast tried to one-up his friends by spending Halloween night alone in an abandoned asylum live streaming his solo ghost hunt. 4 hours in, viewers watched as the door slammed behind him and locked. He spent the night screaming for help on Twitch until firefighters broke in. Over 200,000 people tuned in. He called it the best stream of my life. Honestly, he's not wrong. That's the first time a haunting came with ad revenue. 51. And finally, a man in Idaho dressed as Death for Halloween, black robes, scythe, the whole deal, and went for a walk near a busy intersection. Multiple drivers thought he was an omen and called 911 to report a possible Grim Reaper on Highway 21. When police asked what he was doing, he said, "Just reminding people to drive safe." Congratulations, sir. You've achieved the perfect Halloween paradox. A man trying to be spooky and accidentally becoming the most responsible person in America. And there you have it. Proof that humanity doesn't need monsters when we've got Wi-Fi, costumes, and a total lack of supervision. And if you somehow survived this descent into stupidity, hit like and subscribe. Because trust me, the next batch of chaos is even worse.